Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, hopefully you're doing well. You are ready for today's program, and hey, we have a great one lined up for you, where in the second part of the program, we will be doing computer and technology news. That's where we try to keep up to date on all of the new stuff. I know that one thing that we're definitely going to talk about includes the new Intel i9 processor or whatever, which, fortunately, Intel has really perfected the 14 nanometer architecture. The bad news, they're still on the 14 nanometer architecture. So I promise we'll dumb it down a little bit. But new processors, they're super fast. And hey, we always like to talk about hardware, which is really good for us because in the first part of the show, we're going to be talking about hardware. And this is something a bit more niche, a bit more unique. And I will say that obviously a lot of you out there have kids that are growing up in a day and age where technology, even when I grew up, we had access to computers, and I actually recall very vividly that in fourth grade, I was the first ever student I had a teacher who's been teaching school for, 30, 40 years. In fourth grade, I was the first one to ever give a PowerPoint presentation, and, it was very simple, and, PowerPoint wasn't exactly the hardest thing to use, but it just goes to show that, I'm actually relatively young, and a lot of parents out there, they didn't grow up with the pitfalls of technology. So how to best, I don't want to say, strictly monitor and shelter your child is really the best way to go about it, but to introduce technology, I think, in a healthy and responsible way. And hey, coming from a hardware solution, I think today's program is going to be right up your alley, where we will be speaking with, in just a moment, Tanoshi, and, how they make computers and what makes them unique and what sets them apart from just grabbing an ordinary everyday computer. So everyone, stay tuned for that. First things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including the show notes for past shows, future shows. You'll find podcasts, you'll find the videos, you'll find audio archives, you'll find articles, reviews, topics, all that kind of thing. Check back on a regular basis, and hey, you'll always find something to read, listen to, or watch. Also, find us on social media at Computer America on all those, blah, blah, blah. I think that is about it for the morning announcements. So everyone, let's go ahead and just get started today with, again, with our guest. And again, hopefully you're doing well. And joining us today is none other than Mr. Brad Johnston. He is the co-founder and CEO of Tanoshi, and TanoshiKidsComputers.com. We'll have a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. But Brad, how you doing? Welcome on to Computer America.
Thank you, Ben. Really glad to be here.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. This is and this is always exciting because we love talking to kind of computer manufacturers, and I think that this is going to have an obvious kind of deviation from having, let's say, Dell or Acer or something, a company like that on the show, because you have a kind of a set mission goal. So to start this interview, let's start with the basics and give us a bit of background on yourself. Have you always been in computers? Have you always been co-founding technology companies? And give us a bit of background on Tanoshi and how it started.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate that. So yeah, a little bit of my background. So it's interesting you mentioned, Dell and Acer and Asus and those folks. So I used to work for big tech back in the day before I started my company. So previously I worked for Vizio. I was product manager there, ran their mobility line, computers and tablets. And then prior to that, I was over at Toshiba. And before that, I actually was a consultant that helped startups launch into the retail market. So my career has kind of come full circle. I used to help startups, and now I am that startup that I used to help. Yeah.
And we have so many people on the show that are entrepreneurs and serial entrepreneurs, where they'll start a company, they'll really find they really find their place in the market, and then they say, this is this is not the same atmosphere as what I'm really attracted to when it comes to starting a new company. I don't know if there's like an adrenaline rush to it. I don't know if there's some kind of thrill seeking, or just I don't know what it is, but a lot of people are really drawn to just that having an idea and getting it off the ground.
Yeah, and I think that's very much true in our case. So, I mean, it was very much when I was working for those big tech companies that started identifying a lot of gaps in the market where there were opportunities where, for example, our product, parents were looking for something to get their child started at an early age, developing computer skills. And this is going back 2013, 14, 15, and there wasn't really a great product on the market. There were tablets, which were great for watching streaming videos and, playing games and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had your mainstream computers, but there was really nothing in between. And that's what we set out to build. We saw there's a great opportunity here. We built a very niche product that's specialized for kids ages 6 to 12. It's meant to be their first real computer. It is not a toy.
Mm-hmm.
And we have found that we've been on the market 2 years now. We launched on Amazon in 2018. Sales have been great. Parents have loved the product we build. We're super excited about it, and we're excited to get a computer in the hands of more and more kids so that they can start developing those skills needed to do well in school and also to do well in life, future life, including coding and things like that.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about, again, what separates a computer such as this from an everyday other computer. And, hey, even if that turns out to be nothing other than, hey, just kind of how it's set up, then that's perfect. But I did want to ask you, because you have co-founder here, and I wanted to know about your other founder. Who did you found this with? And yeah.
No, that's a great question. So in 2015, I set off on my own to do this. Soon after, recruited a few great co-founders. Lisa Love is our head of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
She comes from the LA area. Her mother actually worked for LA Unified School District for 50 years. So when we want to know what's going on in LA, we have a great point of contact, and she's still volunteering down there today, which is amazing. My mother was also a school teacher up in Oregon, as well as my sister and my grandmother. So it kind of runs in the family. A couple other co-founders we have. So one has a legal background, a lot in licensing and IP, which is obviously very important for us being a startup. And it also means I don't have to read hundreds and hundreds of pages of legal documents, which is awesome. And then we have another semi-techie person like myself, comes from a background both in hardware and software, which is awesome. And his name's Greg. Between Greg and I, we're the co-product managers who basically oversee the roadmap, the development, the launch, everything.
I gotcha. And really, thank you for laying that out there. And I think now we can jump into the product. And I think a good place to to kind of start this whole thing is, you were mentioning that you didn't see. I'm sorry. You saw a place in the market that wasn't being served, which is computers for kids, and tablets weren't really doing their job. A regular laptop, sounds like wasn't doing its job. What were some of the, I don't want to say errors, but what were some of the underserved markets really asking for? What did you see that you said, I can deliver that?
Well, to start off it was just accessibility for poor. So to kind of put things in perspective, I grew up in poverty until I was about 10 years old.
Mhm.
So I know what it's like to not have the latest and greatest stuff. Everything you have is a hand me down, which includes back in the day. This is I'm not going to tell you my age necessarily, but go back far enough, and there were not computer hand me downs then. So unless you came from a well-to-do family, chances are you didn't have access to that at home. And even at my high school, for example, I think we had a total of 3 computers. So
Mm.
there wasn't really much going on. Cut to many years later, and we're talking to teachers and parents who are in similar situations, and we're hearing a lot of the same stories, which is kind of a shocker. Is that, yeah, we might have that one computer for the entire family at home, but it's slow, it's old, maybe internet connectivity is not great. And one thing that a lot of parents point out to us was, there's a lot of stuff my kid's looking at I don't want them to see.
Right.
So when we went out to set up and develop a product, that was a big part of our mission, was really spend a lot of time listening to teachers in regards to, what are the advantages and disadvantages of kids having and not having a computer in the classroom, which was a big motivation to start our company, because a lot of kids just didn't even have basic typing skills. So that was the first thing we needed to solve. Every child needs to learn and have that opportunity to develop basic skills, because standardized tests nowadays are done on computers. They're not
Yeah.
done by hand. So if you don't have those basic skills, you're already disadvantaged. And then we looked at, where else is it that, again, teachers and parents want for these kids ages 6 to 12. And we went out and developed a special user experience just for them.
Yeah. So again, accessibility and really just having, and just really having it in people's hands and that kind of thing. And really, I mean, we've heard that kind of promise before from other organizations. I think the most notable, a lot of people would really remember, would be, kind of laptops for kids in Africa through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that kind of thing. In developing countries, obviously, this is, you say that there are kids in America today that are in the same situation. So it's not like it's not like it has to be a completely different continent. You still have this mission to accomplish here at home, and it's what really kind of separates a, let's say, kind of a budget laptop, because you have things like Chromebooks out there or netbooks back in the day,
Yep.
kind of cheaper books, and what really separates that from something, I guess, kind of designed for kids to learn on and develop skills on.
That's a great question. So what we started with was actually identifying the pain points of our consumers, which are the parents. And the most difficult challenge for them was actually the setup process.
Hmm.
Little trivia quiz, but do you know what percentage of the US population is comfortable changing the default settings on their devices?
Honestly, I do technology every single day. I get a lot of polls sent to me. I would completely guess that the people comfortable changing the settings on their computer would probably be in the neighborhood of like 20 to 30. That's what I would guess.
Okay, so according to Pew Research, it's around 5%.
Ouch. I'm not doing my job well enough. Gosh darn.
No,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
okay. That's okay. I just like to throw that out there to kind of, level set things. Another one I like to remind people of is, according to the US, Department of Labor, which the last time they did the study, I think was a couple of years ago, less than 3% of Americans who have full-time jobs are techie. So hardware engineer, software engineer, tech support, someone like yourself doing this for a living, you would be in that special 3%. The rest of the population needs help.
Well, and really, that's something that I just don't really get that much of here on the show. Is that I'm surrounded by product managers and CEOs such as yourself that come on, and I'm just surrounded by the best technology. I mentioned that we're going to talk about the new the new Intel processor that just came out, and I rarely have that opportunity to get kind of regrounded and really understand that I am speaking to a small portion of the market. Most people are just generally consumers. They aren't really know-how fix-it people. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. And I mean, there's a lot of people above and beyond that 5% that are interested in technology, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there's only a few of us that really dive deep into it and get our hands dirty with it, which is still, it's fun. I mean, I enjoy it just like you, and I'm looking forward to the second half of your show, hearing about the intel.
Right. But yeah. So you said that only 5% are willing to change settings, and really, based on some of the stories that we've done before, we've advocated on the show that especially for things like Windows OS and things like that, or Windows 10, we've advocated that hey, you need to go into the settings and turn some things off that are on by default. It's and then of course you go into all the different accounts and all the different settings from Facebook to Google to like it. There's a lot of work that you have to kind of dig into to get someone started with technology, that if you don't do it when you first start, you're going to be bleeding a lot of information, which is actually kind of illegal for kids.
There's a lot of truth in that. There definitely is. Yeah. So what we did is we actually developed a parental control user experience. So out of the box, the parent just puts in their Google ID password, if not, creates a quick one for their child, and then literally just hands off the computer to their kid. And now mom and dad are in control. They are, if you want to get into technical terms, they become the admin account. The parent just becomes the admin and the student is the layer beneath that. With the way we develop this, but the parent doesn't feel like they're an admin. They don't need to have special IT skills. They don't need to have experience. It's a very super easy interface app that you load onto your phone that's free. And from that, you can control what your child sees in regards to what apps they can and can't download from the Play Store. So we allow the child to download any app they want, or at least initiate the app download, but mom and dad get prompted to approve or disapprove of that download. So it keeps them in control. Another step is screen time limitations, which is a big deal for parents today. Obviously, with what's going on in the world, a lot of those have been waived a little bit. But in general, parents want their kids out interacting with others, running around, which is very important. And we want that to be part of a child's life. Yes, spend your time at the computer. You need to develop coding skills. You need to develop basic typing skills. You need to develop these skills. These are fundamental skills nowadays. They are going to create 75% of all the new jobs that haven't been created in the future. So if you're not learning these skills, you're getting left behind. And we don't believe that should be the case for anyone, especially someone that just comes from low income. So we went out to solve that, and we realized often low-income kids come from low-income families, sometimes without the greatest education. So again, those are the parents who don't have the skills necessarily to go through all the parental control settings and modify everything. So we do that for them. Out of the box, everything is set up to be age appropriate for your child age 6 to 12.
So talk about some of these maybe applications, because I think that a lot of people, it's definitely shifted. But back in the day, you used to be able to say that, hey, if you're on this website, or you hand someone a phone, of course, Apple or Google, or in this case, really Google, they wouldn't allow inappropriate apps on their store, especially not for kids. And kids would never lie that they're 13 or older to download an app when they're not supposed to. This idea that you can kind of hand a kid a piece of technology, and you can say, well, anything that they shouldn't be accessing, they can't access already. What are some? Do you have any examples of, let's say, what parents are really worried about when it comes to allowing full access to the internet?
Sure. Well, I mean, so amongst other things, one thing we worked on with Google was modifying the Chrome browser so that it's locked into safe search by default. Mm-hmm. And the child can't change that. They can't put it in incognito mode. They're stuck in safe search. And with that, you're less likely to find certain bad words. You're much less likely to obviously find nude pictures and things like that, which is really a concern of parents. So that's a big one for us. We actually worked with Google so that all the standard apps you would use, for your homework assignments and everything else, that we try to lock those down as much as we can to be, again, age appropriate 6 to 12. So they're not seeing content they shouldn't. On top of that, we do preload some great educational content. The product we have on the market includes a couple apps for kids to learn how to code as young as 5 years old. Because that's another one we hear from parents a lot is, hey, I want my child to learn how to code. I don't know where to start. And we even come from Silicon Valley. We hear that from many engineers in Silicon Valley ask us that question, which just blows us away.
Yeah, it's and actually funny that you mentioned that. We actually ran a repeat yesterday, and yesterday was how to kind of get started coding because there's so much great information out there. And of course, ours was an hour-long show about all the free different resources between Khan Academy and Code Academy and all these different ways that you can kind of get free information and that kind of thing. But that's more for like adults, who can navigate there and just pick it up and get going. Kids in coding. We've had guests on the show that have found ways to gamify it, to turn it into toys, and basic. Some of the basic concepts can be turned into like a video game kind of thing. What is the best approach that you found? Is there a curriculum that you favor? How do you get kids interested in something that I think a lot of people consider as complex as coding?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the jury's still out on this one. But what we found is there's definitely two different mindsets when it comes to the kids. There's those that are extremely creative, and for them we have ScratchJr, which is very much a sandbox approach, blocky based program where you just move things around and play around and kind of see what works, right? Which is great. And for some kids, that's awesome. For some kids, they need a little more motivation before that. And for them, we actually preloaded a game where you're starting to learn how to code and you don't even realize it because it's 100% gamified. And it's called Nancy Drew Codes and Clues. It's from an all-female startup organization out of Seattle called Her Interactive. And they basically took Nancy Drew, reinvented her as a middle school student who needs to program her robot puppy to win the science fair and solve a mystery.
Of course. We've all been there, right?
It is. So, I mean, it starts with this. It's really meant, amongst other things, to get young kids, wanting to learn how to code, not knowing it by playing a game, but also keep in mind the lead character is female, very intentional. Today, less than 30% of professional coders are female. There's a huge gap in a gender gap in the market. And we're trying to help that. And we actually recently collected some survey feedback from our customers to date. And what we're hearing is about 65 to 70% of our computers are being bought for girls. And we're super excited about that. That was a big part of our mission from day one, to close that gap. And we believe we're headed the right direction. A lot of what we found with kids is put on content they identify with. And as long as you do that, they're going to try it. They're going to play with it. Plus, if it's preloaded, you probably remember these little games we used to have as kids that just had one game, on one screen. If you put it in their hands, they'll play with it. And if it happens to be educational, it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, the amount of hours I put into space pinball or solitaire probably didn't develop that many skills, but I played them anyways.
Yep.
So and actually this you've mentioned two of these already, but I wanted to ask you about preloaded apps because that is really it's a scourge on really current computers that anyone can buy off the shelf, is that so many come with pre-installed applications that either A, can't be installed, or B, should be installed because they simply they're bloatware. They're paid by the developers of the application to be put onto the computers by default, hoping that people will just kind of keep it on there and potentially even maybe use it. A lot of them are I should really say some of them are, really, really just not that good. They're even bad for the operation of the system. And I say all this because people need to be concerned with the applications that come preloaded on a computer for something like this, where you're saying that, hey, this is going to be accessible. This is going to be for people who may not know all of the background of all of the apps on the device. How discerning were you for putting applications on your device?
Oh, extremely. I mean, the first and foremost for us was anything had to be COPPA compliant. Are you familiar with COPPA, or would you like to kind of tell your audience about it a little bit?
COPPA, and I think that has to do with data protections here in the U.S., and especially for kids. I think it's...
Correct. So COPPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act,
that one.
Which the government put into effect about 15 years ago. So they're talking about it's about time for an update. It's been a while. But yeah, the general philosophy of COPPA was privacy protection for kids, but it's also just appropriateness of content and whatnot. So that's a big part of us. So you're not going to find that bloatware you talked about on our device. There's no anti-spyware or anything like that preloaded that you're never going to be able to remove. Everything we include is basically what teachers told us, the kids are using in the classroom and they wanted, as far as the Google Suite was concerned. Right. So, we have Google Docs, Sheets, Drive, calculator, Gmail, if the parents choose to set that up. And also things like Google Earth, so they can explore, which is, we know a lot of kids are having a lot of fun with Google Earth, being staying at home right now, because it's your opportunity to get out and see what the rest of the world looks like. So we really try to keep a great focus on being age appropriate, also being educational, and to make sure we don't put any of that bloatware that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really the software included is going to be one thing. And then of course, the other one, the software that is available to you. You've mentioned a couple times the Google Play Store, which is probably one of the biggest app stores on Earth. And of course, there's a lot of weird stuff, but at the same time, I think everything that you would possibly need at some point is going to be on the Google Play Store. Are there parental settings for that? Of course, there would be, but do you have like a curated Google Play Store that's available through your computer, or is it just the full-blown Google Play Store?
So we have the full-blown Google Play Store, but by default, again, because the parental controls are meant for preteens, anything rated 18 plus is blocked. I gotcha. So yeah, they're not going to be able to download any of that. And even a lot of content that's 13 plus is blocked as well. And that's very much by default. That said, if there is an app the child needs, we want to make this clear, their school is requiring it, for example, the parent can go into the settings on their device and change that. And I'm not necessarily just going to throw it out now over the air how to do that, but if anyone wants to contact our support or go to our FAQ page, sure. there's some help there. But yeah, we make sure that, there's over 3 million apps in the Play Store today. We want to make sure kids and families have access to these. But at the same time, we want to make sure that they're discovering the right apps, right? And so we do try to help filter a little bit. But not overstep, because at the end of the day, we don't want to play God. We don't want to play parents. That's the parents' job. Our job is to just let you know, here's what's available. We're going to preload some great content. And if there's additional content you want out there, it's available as well.
So, and really, there's a couple things there I want to respond to. And first one, I know that you just said this, kind of probably didn't give too much thought about that, but this is something that we've had with other parental kind of applications, and I actually remember getting on the fight with someone on the show about this, where their product was aimed at surreptitiously monitoring everything their kid did on their phones and computers. And here on Computer America, it's been a long time policy that when it comes to kids and computers, you said play God, and that's not for the parent to do. We find, and just being here on the show, we find that it's easier to have applications that kind of start that conversation. You mentioned that parents have to approve apps that are installed by younger kids on this laptop, and having that conversation. Why do you want to download this? What are you going to do with it? Who are you talking to on it? Things like that. Those are good conversations that privacy settings and privacy software can encourage. Key logging and finding receiving every single text message that they receive. That kind of thing is very, kind of drives a wedge between the parent and the kid, because you're not, you're trusting them with a computer, but at the same time, you're looking over everything that they do, and they know that. Where do you stand on that whole key logging, spyware? But hey, it's your kid, your computer. Maybe you should be allowed to do that.
So our philosophy on this is pretty simple. We see ourselves like a bicycle with training wheels, right? So you got the little kid toddler tablets like the Amazon, Kids Edition, which are really that walled garden that some parents want. And those are great for those parents, except for kids outgrow them by kindergarten. They're ready to move on to the next thing. Right. But parents aren't really ready to give them, a full-blown, Microsoft PC or Chromebook or whatever yet. That just doesn't have all these easy to set up parental controls quite yet. So we're kind of that in between. We are the bike with training wheels. We'll let your kid, let's be honest, you're going to fall and scrape yourself from time to time, but let mom and dad help you out. Tell them why, walk that story through them. We're a big believer in sitting down at the dinner table together and talking about what you did online that day. We're not going to push it down people's throats, but the way we develop the system, it encourages that. And that's a big part of us, is making sure that communication is flowing. Technology, we're obviously big fans of, but sometimes it oversteps a little bit. Our opinion on that is simple. Every parent has their own level of how much they want to be able to monitor their child. And if the child's uncomfortable, let them have that conversation.
Yeah.
With the way we've built our system, it can really be adjusted and adjusted easily to fit in with any family.
So yeah, that was the second thing I wanted to respond to, which is I really like that this is the entire Google Play Store. You mentioned that kids kind of outgrow certain devices. Of course, hardware marches on forever, and things are always going to come out that are better, faster, and that kind of thing. But there's not like a set. A kid is going to turn 13, and they're just going to throw away your tablet because that's for kids. That's just too immature for me. This tablet can continue being a fully functioning tablet. Be it for applications, for reading, for whatever. There's not like a self-destruct, kid turns 13, your product is useless now.
No. So actually, when the child turns 13, the parent has an option. And this needs to, again, be a conversation with the child. So the way we develop the Family Link app with Google is when the child is about to turn 13, a notification comes to the parent and the child saying, your parental controls are going to turn off when they're 13. That said, if the parent wants, they can extend some of those parental controls. The child does start getting a little more control at that point in time. And if the parental controls are turned off, at the end of the day, what you'll end up with, and your audience will probably understand this well, is pretty much a Google Nexus device. So it's a 10-inch tablet plus detachable keyboard with everything Google offers, plus what we throw on there as well. So if you remove our parental controls, that's kind of what you're getting. So you can definitely grow with this. And we have found, remarkably, that quite a few of our customers are moms and women who just love the size of this device, which doesn't really surprise us because you mentioned earlier, and I remember well from my days at Toshiba netbooks. And
yeah.
We actually found at Toshiba, I don't know if you ever heard this story before, but when we launched them, that even though they were launched to the businessmen audience, it was actually stay-at-home moms that bought the majority of those products.
Did not know that.
Yeah,
and of course, netbooks back in the day, they were like so many things with technology back then. There was this idea of miniaturization, go smaller, 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 and it was something about half the size of a laptop. But it was pretty interesting that I guess a stay-at-home mom could just kind of pull it out, kind of type on it and then stow it away later. It wasn't this big thing. It like you said, it was meant for traveling businessmen, but that's interesting. I did not hear that story. So with that being said, we've been looking at the product here on the video portion, if anyone would like to check that out. But I think it's time to start talking about the hardware. And, we have some descriptions here, but we want to hear it from you. Physically, let's say someone goes out and buys, a Tanoshi computer. Physically, what are they going to find in the box?
Okay, cool. So what you're going to find inside the box is a 10-inch HD screen multi-touch tablet running Android 7. You're also going to find a full-size QWERTY keyboard, but there's a disclaimer to that. It's kids' full-size QWERTY keyboard. So the QWERTY buttons are going to be a little bit smaller than you're normally used to. So someone like yourself or myself, I'm 6'3". The buttons are a little small for my hands. But my wife, who is a small Japanese lady, they're perfect for her. So it really depends on the person. And what we've heard from parents and kids is it's perfect for us, for them, for their age group, ages 6 to 12. And then, of course, you have your standard AC adapter. We throw a quick setup guide in there, which is literally 2 pages. Our setup couldn't be any easier, which was a big part of why it took us 3 years to come to market. We did not want to put a product on market unless it was super easy for parents to use. That kind of goes back to the point we made at the very beginning, right? Mm-hmm. As far as other specs are concerned, so as I mentioned, 720 touchscreen, 32 gig storage, 2 gig RAM, which is more than enough for Android. Android only needs 0.5 to run. 1 usually runs pretty well. 2 is great. Mm-hmm. A pretty speedy quad-core processor. We have a 2 megapixel front camera, 5 megapixel back. So if you're bored at home and you want to film some videos with your friends, you can, or you can take selfies. So we allow children to do, everything that mom and dad might do with their phone, or mm-hmm. older sister, my sister, brother might do with their phone. The children can do with this device.
Yeah, and really, just want to make this perfectly clear that it is a tablet with a attachable, detachable keyboard to it. So, I mean, hey,
Correct.
it's we've been saying like laptop every here and again, but you decide to go with a tablet. Why was touchscreen? Why was a tablet? Is that something that kids just kind of gravitate towards? Just being able to reach out and touch their computer. Is it something that you found, or was it just the best way to I guess kind of keep the price down?
All of the above. The touchscreen was super important, so that was a big one. We'd studied the market, and other people have had tried to, and I'm not going to throw any names out
Hmm.
there, but let's say some big tech companies have tried to make computers for kids and failed miserably, because they were building products that, for them, they were chasing a price point. They weren't really paying attention to what it was that the consumer wanted. We did the exact opposite. We immediately just started collecting. We spent 2 years just collecting data, doing surveys, doing focus groups with parents, with teachers, and with their children to understand what's super important. And having a touch screen and a big screen were very important to the kids. The parents, it was all about the parental controls. It was all about the content and the price point. So we put together the best of both worlds. Basically, every kid today wants, let's be honest, they all want a smartphone. I don't know if you have a child or not, but any parent that has a child knows they want a smartphone because that's what they see mom and dad on all day long. However, not every child's getting a smartphone, when they're 6, 7 years old.
Right.
And a tablet, especially an Android tablet, is really the next best thing out there. And it's great. The beauty about it is we were able to combine all the best of the worlds of what comes with Android so the kids can love it, and all the best of the world, which would come with, say, a PC or a Chromebook, so the parents would love it and the teachers would love it and the kids can get their homework done and use this to be not just a consumption device, but an actual productivity device.
Yeah, and really, this seems like something that will last them for a number of years as they kind of go through school. Because I'm far removed from school at this point, but I got to say that I think that students having an email is just as important as kind of students having a mailing address back in the day. Kids need an email and a way to kind of talk with their teachers. So this can serve them well. And I wanted to ask you, because we've been throwing around a lot of ages, and kind of pre-13 is obvious, but when should parents kind of look into this? Because obviously a kid starts kindergarten at 5 or 6 years of age. Before that, I don't know what preschoolers are up to, but I don't know if it's very technically inclined. What age do you think that kids should, maybe consider, or parents should consider getting their kid a piece of technology?
That's a great question, and that one we actually went to a lot of professionals to seek their advice. So we went to doctors, we went to professors, especially neuroscience, who are studying the development of the brain, to understand kind of when is the right time. We talked to teachers who, at different age groups, have tried to teach kids how to code and build basic skills, and at what age kids start really grasping it, and when you're kind of, let's be honest, you're gone in a little too early, which especially in this day and age, everyone wants to give their child a head start, and they
Right.
want them sitting in front of a computer as quick as possible. What we have found is that it's actually around age 5 or 6 when kids can start developing skills and really retaining the fundamental skills of what it means to use a computer and code. So for those of you out there, which sounds like most of your audience, you understand the if then else philosophy of coding, right?
Hmm.
Right. Kids don't really get that until they're about 5 or 6 years old. And so trying to teach them that prior to that, you're just kind of like beating your head against the wall. And also, there is a true thing about, screen time and too much. And when you're a younger kid, it's good to get them developing these skills, playing board games, playing other games, interactive. You don't need to be in front of a screen when you're really young. But by elementary school, we believe you do, because if you don't, you're starting to, fall behind the rest of your classmates, because schools younger and younger and younger are starting to use computers for homework, for other assignments. And again, once you can start developing these skills, it's kind of like learning a foreign language or just learning English or math. Around kindergarten, first grade is when you really want to kick that stuff off.
It really sounds like you are getting at really a different type of literacy, where there's kind of reading literacy and being able to read and write and that kind of thing, but then computer literacy, I guess, again, one of those things I never really give thought to because I have it. Computer literacy and being able to use the internet effectively and use computers and technology effectively. That's something that kids need to kind of pick up on earlier and earlier, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it used to be. You can kind of catch up with everybody if you started in middle school or high school because we were all kind of starting then,
Hmm.
right? But the game has changed. I mean, our company has done a lot of volunteer learn to code classes in the Bay Area, some in Silicon Valley, some in Oakland. It's a very different world down there. Down in Silicon Valley, kids are often learning to code as young as kindergarten, first grade. It starts becoming part of their curriculum. We go around the corner to Oakland. We've taught kids coding classes to fifth graders, and it's the first time they've ever seen a line of code.
Yeah.
And it's literally a half hour drive from one school to the next. It's just there's a world of difference out there. A lot of people, I think, who come from better off families, maybe they don't see what's going on out there. But there's a lot of people who included me when I was young, who grew up in poverty and are hearing from a distance what's going on, but we're not a part of that. And that's a big part of our mission is we realize not every school can afford teachers. Not every school can afford, especially a special computer science teacher, computers, the internet, everything else. And so for them, we have an experience where kids can learn at home, develop the same skills, so that when they get to high school, they're on par with the other kids who came from those schools and started developing them earlier.
So one thing that I've kind of noticed as you walked us through the system and kind of what's available to you, obviously very invested with Google, and I think Google more so than a lot of other companies out there because they have so much data. Yeah, they don't really want to run afoul of kind of the data laws out there, and they offer a lot of protection for kids, and that's all great. Facebook, kind of the same way. They are, they have a lot of data, they have a lot of user accounts, they have put in protections for, let's say, like linked accounts for people who are, kids, and they link them to their parents' Facebook account, and it's this whole thing. So my question to you is social media. I mean, I don't know what a 9-year-old's Twitter feed would look like, but yeah, you really haven't mentioned anything about social media when it comes to Facebook, Twitter, or anything like that. Is that like obviously those are going to be available through the Google Play Store, but you didn't make it a focus that hey, create your kid a Facebook account and link it to your Facebook account.
Yeah, well, there was actually a lot of back thought to that as well. Part of it comes down to a comment I made earlier in that we're not going to play parent. So by preloading something, we're kind of already, telling your child this should be your preferred social media.
Hmm.
We're not big fans of that, especially if it's not age appropriate. So yeah, you're not going to find much of that preloaded from us.
I gotcha.
But it is available in the Play Store, as you mentioned. And if the child goes to download, say, Instagram, for example, mom and dad get a little pop-up notification on their phone. That cues the conversation.
Right.
Why do you want Instagram? Yeah, I see in the Play Store it says this is for ages 13 plus. You're 8. What makes you think you're as mature as a 13-year-old? And let them have that conversation. And often what we've heard results from it is parents usually give permission to their child and just say, you need to make me your friend so I can follow you. I can be connected. And it makes that connection immediately instead of the mom and dad discovering a month later after something was posted that shouldn't have been that their child's been on Instagram the whole time.
I completely understand. So, and really, I just wanted the idea of social media being out there, and why it wasn't a preloaded feature. So, hey, glad to hear that you actually thought about it, and yeah, probably for the better that it's not actually loaded on there by default. So some of these other ones, we talked about the specs, and they're a very good mid-range tablet. Kids are going to be able to kids will be able to use this for a long time to come. Talk about the price point because you said chasing price points, and I know that putting everything you can in there is going to make the price skyrocket. But at the same time, it looks like you put a lot of effort to really make sure that you did come in at something reasonable, for what you're getting.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you mentioning that. So amongst other things, our team, though we are a startup, we're a team of veterans. Everyone has at least 10 years real world experience working for big corporations. So unlike some kids out of college, I'm not knocking them. I think there's some great work coming from startups straight out of college. But we really, we understood the supply chain market. We had connections overseas. We had connections with developers here. We're all over the place. And with my market research background, which I've been doing for 15 years, ever since I've been in the industry, I know the number one selling feature for parents is price. So first thing we wanted to do was be at least half the price of iPad, which we are. And we're very proud of that. So if you buy a 10-inch iPad plus a keyboard, you're not going to find that for under $400. Good luck. Our device you're going to find for under $200 every day, every single day. And from time to time, if you follow us on social media, you might actually find when we're on rebates as well. So, but yeah, price was a big one because that we found that was actually the biggest barrier to access for most families. And unfortunately, I can't show you right now because we're sold out on our website. But anyone who wants to go to our website and actually hits the view details button under the product about it, or actually, if you don't mind scrolling up, we're actually looking at the page for those at home. Scroll to the top. We actually initiated a program recently where people can buy our product without any extra fees, any extra markups at an installment plan, so you can pay monthly. Again, access, affordability. That said, we're not going to be the doorstop cheapo tablet that you'd find at some retailers. We also have heard that's just a terrible experience. Don't go too low in spec. This thing needs to be able to play my games. I need to be able to do whatever programs I want to do with it. It needs to run smooth. So we put in processors to exactly your point. They're mid-range. They're pretty good. So you're going to get a great experience. If you're playing Minion Rush, for example, it's awesome. You're not going to get lag. You're not going to get those issues. So that was a big part of it, was how can we make sure kids can play their games, they can do their homework, and they can do everything they need to do. It's an awesome experience, and yet we don't break the bank for the parents at the same time. And we've spent a lot of time, took us again years and years, but we believe we hit it out of the park with this product. And we have another product coming later this summer. We're not ready to announce quite yet. And we think parents are going to be even more excited when that comes to market.
You should definitely send us an email, and we'd love to have you back on when you're ready to announce that. And really just for fun, a particular product on Wish of all places. I found a tablet for $44. It's normally $2,000, marked down to $44. And I would not recommend that whatsoever. I think that the company that you buy it from actually does matter a lot. Price is not everything, and even at sub $200, you can get a lot of tablets that are complete knockoffs, ripoffs, and just horrible. Which brings me, I think, to one of the last points I wanted to speak about, because you've made it a point on your website, so I feel like I want to talk about it. Customer support. And I think for a product like yours, that's going to entail a lot more than just, hey, my product didn't arrive or didn't arrive on time. Customer support, I guess, should include, hey, the parent's having a problem, or my child is having this problem. How can you help me? Talk about customer support and what that means for products such as yours.
Okay, that's great. So we have a US-based customer support. It's actually half our current team, because we are a pretty small startup company still. But it's a big part of what we're doing. Again, it goes back to the statements we made at the beginning about how 95% of Americans don't consider themselves very techy. They might be hobbyists, if you will, but there's a lot who, beyond turning the device on and off, it's not really their specialty. So we're there to help them all the way through. Again, we made the user experience as seamless as possible to make it so parents don't need to call us. They can do it on their own. A lot of things are really self-explanatory. But if someone does get stuck, we're right there to help them. And so far, the response has been great. People love the fact that we're there, and the fact that we're right here in the US. You're going to get a native English-speaking support person pick up the phone.
Yeah, that's and another great selling point, because I have been on the other end of that. And hey, there's only so many times that you can get sent up the ladder, which I really think you get sent sideways on the ladder before you just hang up and say whatever. So I will say that I really feel like that we have a good grasp on on what it means to kind of get a laptop 2-in-1 tablet from you. I'm going to leave you with, kind of the last part of it. Is there anything that we didn't talk about, anything that we didn't cover that you feel like we should probably mention?
I think it's been pretty good. All I would say is for any parents there, struggling to figure out what to do with your kids at home, kids love exploring. And at the age between 5 and 9 is when you really want your child to try everything. That's when, according to neuroscience, their brain's developing the most. And they're also developing interests that will stick with them for the rest of their lives, including, is coding for cool kids or is coding for nerds? And we don't want that. We want every child to believe coding is cool. This is something you should continue to pursue a career in computer science, or at least have these basic fundamental skills. And we just want parents to be aware and know you can wait till middle school or high school if that's what your school does, which is how most schools act. I see there's a screen being shared right now from code.org. Mm-hmm. And on that, code.org reports that, only 40% of high schoolers in America have the opportunity to learn to code in the classroom. Only 40%.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sad. Or it's up to 45. Woohoo, it's growing. But if you go down to middle school, it's even less. You go down to elementary school, and if you're not in the top 10% of, high income neighborhoods and schools, you're probably not learning how to code. And that means you could be falling behind the curve. So we encourage parents, whatever you can, even if it's going to your local library, maybe not right now, but when the time is right, get your kids just exploring, trying it just like they would try playing an instrument, playing a sport. See if they develop an interest, because it's really at that young age is when most interests are developed, and it's when you want to try.
And this is something that we have covered on the show for a number of years, because I one of the most notable was having Intel on the show, and they were having their kind of junior awards where they had, all these different, I guess kind of like science fair, but it was STEM related. So it could be anything in technology. And by the way, what a coincidence that some of the best projects, their parents worked for NASA or were computer scientists in their spare time. What a coincidence. But I got to say that, it was Intel's mission for a long time. And really, it seems like the entire tech industry has been pushing for more girls and women to get into the STEM field. And, as much as people hear it on the show, I do want to make it a point that, I have a chart here that... and this is probably dated because this is the exact chart I remember, where, even as recently as like 2017, it's been increasing, but then at the same time in like the early 2000s and even through to today, you're not seeing that kind of huge growth like you're seeing with, kind of boys and men. There's still a lot of work to be done here. Like, as much as people advocate, such as systems such as yourself, I don't know if it's media representation. I don't know if it's getting a younger age and, hey, a 6-year-old boy learning how to code. Everyone's like, yeah, 6-year-old girl. They're like, girls wouldn't be interested in that. Not the case, So as much as people hear about it, there's still a lot of work to be done for, kind of women in STEM fields. So, yeah, yep. Just one point that I agree. So with on that cheery note, I think that regardless of gender, kids today really do need to become literate and not just reading science, math, that kind of thing. But of course, hey, technology, it's going to play a bigger role. I don't know about you, Brad, but I don't see a future where computers are going to go away, and computers don't seem to be a fad. You got to learn how to use these things. And hey, you might be teaching some parents at the same time as well. So with that being said, everyone, Tanoshi Kids Computers.com, or computers with an S.com, or we'll have a link over at computeramerica.com. Just check it out. It'll be the first post there. And hey, you'll be good to go. So once again, Brad Johnston, co-founder, CEO, and this was a lot of fun. I knew it would be. This is a topic that I really do like talking about, and because hey, the more kids that we can turn on to technology, the more secure our future audience is. So thank you so much for coming on, Brad. This is fun.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it.
All right, and we're going to end the call here, but we're going to go ahead and do computer and technology news for like 5 minutes. But Brad, until next time, and really, again, welcome on the show anytime. Have a good one.
All right, thank you. You too.
All right, and everyone, we're going to go ahead and do computer and technology news if you'd like to check that out. So here we go. So for anyone who doesn't know Computer America behind the scenes, we use Zoom meetings, just not sponsored or anything like that. Just, hey, it's what we found most convenient, and it's quickly becoming an industry standard. And just as I hung up, right here in the middle of their patch notes that they are releasing today, I gotta say, right here nestled is security enhancements. Boy, if that is not an understatement of the century. So we'll figure that one out. So, in these last 5 minutes that we have, we're going to do computer and technology news. And what I really wanted to cover is the new Intel processor. So, and let me just go ahead and find the patch notes. Patch notes here. Let's see. So I think that let's see, and let's pull from Gizmodo. So everyone, you can find it here. We'll have it in the show notes. Yeah, another update. Who knew? 2 weeks after AMD announced super-fast laptop processors, Intel announced its rival. There you go. So, and this is by Joanna Nelius, and AMD may have gotten its 7nm tech down, but according to Intel, AMD's new Ryzen 9 4900H and 4900HS mobile processors are no match for its older 14nm tech. Today, Intel announced that that the arrival of its high-end 10th gen mobile CPU, and Intel is still coasting on its 14nm tech, which with these new processors, but the company says it's made the first mobile processor to hit speeds of 5 gigahertz and over, which is incredible because a lot of full-blown computers can barely hit 5 gigs, and this one is looking at something that you're looking at about 5 gigs base speed or boosted, and then it could go as far as 5.3. So there you go. They said that all have a thermal design power of about 45 watts, support dual channel 2933 megahertz RAM, and are compatible with Intel Thermal Velocity Boost and Intel Optane memory, saying that only the i9 and one of the i7s will have 8/16 cores and threads. So, and you can see it here, this is the H series of mobile processors. In the little time that I have, I want to tell you why this big deal about 14 versus 7 nanometer. It's because 14 nanometer, they are squeezing every little bit of performance out of that chipset. It's perfected. The improvements you're going to see are going to be year over year, 10%, either due to just kind of incremental improvements, due to processing ability, due to manufacturing ability. Making sure that less and less are corrupt. A lot of these are kind of clocked at a lower clock speed, just so that they don't crash and kind of end up not working. So that little bit of performance year over year is something that you can always expect. But when you drop down to 7 nanometer versus 14, you're using less electricity. And by using less electricity, you're generating less heat. And less heat means you can get more performance by running, the same amount of electricity, getting more performance, generating less heat. And hey, you don't have to mitigate that. So everything is just better when you drop it down from 14 to 7 or Intel's plan of 14 to 10. The problem is that Intel for the past 5 years has been stuck on this 14 nanometer threshold, whereas AMD in particular has been able to drop it down from 14 to 10 to 7. So they're a few generations ahead of Intel. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean that they're not working and researching and developing. It just means that, hey, they have a ways to catch up. So now we'll go ahead and jump down to the end here, saying that keeping all that in mind, it seems like Intel is working hard to retain the title of best computer processor, but that doesn't mean that the AMD Ryzen 9 4000 series are something to be overlooked. And indeed, I would say that until Intel really shrinks their die down to the 10, if not just straight to the 7, Yeah, AMD is going to start looking more and more attractive, especially for mobile processing, where that 7 nanometer, as I said before, less electricity for the same performance and less heat. That means that, hey, your laptop, your phone, your tablet, all those things are going to last longer on the same size battery. Better performance, better battery life. Yeah, if Intel doesn't kick it into high gear here, AMD is just going to decisively take the crown for best processor all over. Right now, Intel still has performance speeds. I think cores are AMD has gone all in on the multi-core, multi-thread, kind of system. But man, even core speed is soon going to be overshadowed by AMD. So, I've always been a fan of Intel. They were really my first system. Intel and NVIDIA, they are my favorite CPU, GPU kind of combination, but you got to go where the innovation is, and the innovation has to be, actually meaningful. So that's about all the time that we have here for today. I think we're going to go ahead and call it there. Not a lot of computer technology news. Again, I love talking about hardware, but there you go. So, and by the way, we were just talking about, kind of the top end of the processors. There are also, there's a whole slew of the next generation of processors. So the 10th gen Intel Core processors, the H series, and they're impressive. They're fast, they're zippy. Intel, step it up. That's all we can say. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. We hope that you enjoyed today's guest. We hope that you enjoyed today's show. And if you want to find out more, computeramerica.com. Until next time, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.